Greetings, everyone. I'm Stephen Rosenbaum, the Executive Director of the Sustainable Media Center, and I am very glad you're all here and excited for what I hope will be an important and interesting conversation. Jonathan Haidt is an extraordinary professor, researcher, and author. His book, The Anxious Generation, remains on the New York Times bestseller list. It seems to have become required reading for almost every parent struggling to figure out what to do to manage the impact of phones and social media on their children. He's joined today by his research partner, Zach Roush, and both of them are excited to hear what you guys have to say about phones in schools. We have one reminder. Sustainable Media Center is intergenerational by nature, and we pride ourselves in bringing together leaders and young people to talk about issues in a mutually beneficial way. So with that, we expect there to be some disagreement, some back and forth, and some pushback, but we want the entire conversation to be respectful. We pride ourselves in creating conversations that take place because leaders want to ask questions. And with that, Jonathan is the one who brought this to the Sustainable Media Center and said he'd be interested in hearing what young people had to say about phones in schools. So with that, I don't think any of us come to this conversation with any confusion about the complexity of the role of phones that play in our lives. And I'm hopeful that all of us will come away from this hour having learned some things and shared some things. So with that, I hand the microphone over to Jonathan and let the conversation begin.
All right, thanks so much, Steve. So it's really appealing that the Sustainable Media Center is all about intergenerational conversation and interaction, because that's what Zach and I really need. When we were writing the book, I sort of this grew out of my previous book, The Coddling the American Mind, and I was making the scientific case and bristling all the evidence and what's the story for girls and what's the story for boys. And we thought about, at the end, we have a chapter on what parents can do, a chapter on what schools can do, a chapter on what governments can do. And we thought about having a paragraph on what Gen Z can do. And I even sketched out what might be in it. But it sounded kind of preachy, and it just wasn't landing. And we were way past deadline on the book. And so what we decided was, the most urgent thing in 2024, we've got to get policymakers, legislators, we've got to get the adults moving quickly to change the policies within which kids are raising. And then we'll do a more open, careful job. We'll talk with members of Gen Z afterwards. And that's what we're doing. And so Zach has actually spoken with a few of you already. Zach, who's technically not Gen Z. He was born in 1995 or 4. He's just barely 94. Yeah. So he's just barely a millennial, but a lot closer to you guys than I am. In any case, so I thought what we do is I'm going to just give like a 5 or 10 minute sort of overview of what the movement is, what we're trying to do. And then I especially want to get criticism from you, either of what I say now or of what you've read. And I always try to do this whenever I speak to an audience with Gen Z. I always try to ask, what have I gotten wrong? What have I missed? That's the way you learn. That's the way you get better. So I'll speak for a bit. I'll ask you, especially for criticism, and then maybe we'll brainstorm about how to make you and your organizations more effective, how you can make us more effective, how we can work together better, all that stuff. So first, let's just start with just briefly, just everybody say your name. And if you represent an organization, if you have a particular issue, just say so. I just want to make sure that Zach and I know exactly who's here and, for follow-up especially. So I think we all see each other in the same order. I see, just going around, I see Evan, then Kanika, then Matthew. Go ahead, Evan.
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me well.
Yep.
It is a great pleasure to meet you. I really want to thank Steve for making this happen. I want to thank you, Jonathan and Zach, for writing the book and also making this happen. It's crazy how this came full circle because I was reading it and, now I'm, here being able to have this discussion. So first, just want to say thank you.
Great.
And my name is Evan. Deeply passionate about psychology and education, and today I represent the Met High School in Providence, Rhode Island.
Got it. Great, very good to meet you, Evan. Okay, Kanika, how do you pronounce that?
It's pronounced Kanika. Nice to meet you. I actually met you back in an event in May, and that's what got me, working with SMC in the first place, which is great because we have an event next week. Hope to see some of you there. And yeah, and now I'm joining the Aspen Institute for their Center of Rising Generations, which is a new project that they've gotten a huge fund to do. And so I'm actually really excited to see how some of those insights can be transposed to the work that they're trying to do there and getting young people kind of in part of the conversation to reconcile all the resources that we have with sort of the lived experiences of young people.
Excellent. Kanika, you froze for a minute there. Did you say something before Aspen Institute? Was there any other organization?
Oh, well, I just mentioned that I'm working with SMC.
Okay, yeah, SMC.
And I
Okay,
worked
good.
with NBC for a few years.
Oh, okay. Will you be at the Aspen Ideas Festival in June and July?
I'm waiting until my onboarding to ask that. I hope
Okay.
so.
You should ask. It's so
Because
much
those
fun.
tickets
It's
are
so
expensive
interesting.
otherwise, but I think they should
Yeah.
get us.
See if they can, yeah, see if they'll see if it's really fun. And then I would see you there. Okay, Matthew?
Hi, I'm Matthew Stevens. I'm not representing technically any org today, but I come from a background with Design It For Us and the Log Off movement.
Great, good. Two movements I know Zach's been in communication with, and I have too a bit. Design it for us. And what? Oh, Emma is sick today. Is that what Emma was going to be here, right? But yeah. Okay, and log off. Okay. Well, Zach, why don't you're next? Go ahead.
All right, I'm Zach Roush. I know a couple of you here. Hello, Sean. Hello, Nick. And yeah, I've been working with John since I was in graduate school during COVID in 2020. I was in upstate New York, and I've been working with John for 5.5 years. And now I'm leading our research group called the Tech and Society Lab, and we're doing all things social media, play, the book 2.0. So happy to talk about that as well and all the research that we're doing. So that's me.
Yeah, great. Samara?
Hi, I'm Samara. I also don't represent any organizations, but I'm a part of the Log Off movement, and I work with Common Sense Media as well. And I'm also the leader of my school's mental health club, Active Minds. And I go to Groton School, a high school.
Okay, very good. School's mental health club. Very good. Okay, great. Nathan?
Hi everyone. My name is Nathan. Sorry if it's a little loud. I'm at a cafe with music. I am a sophomore at Columbia and I'm currently not really representing, but I'm also from Design It For Us.
Wow. Oh, wow. This is, I guess, is this like the largest Gen Z organization? Design It For Us? Okay, good. Good to hear. Okay. Welcome, Nathan. Good to see you. Catherine?
Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm a 16-year-old high school student in Singapore. So it's currently 5 a.m. But
That's dedication. Nice to see you.
Thank you. I spoke at the Future House during Davos, and
Oh, excellent.
yeah, I met Steve, and this is kind of where I am right now. But yeah, I'm not particularly representing anyone right now, but maybe I'd like to get some insights for school and just learn more. Thanks.
Great. All right. Nick Plant?
Hey, I'm Nick. At the same table as Nathan in the Loud Cafe, so pardon that. But yeah, I've been involved with the Sustainable Media Center since your event with Emma last year, John. Also work with Design It For Us, and I've been doing some more research and writing about tech and society issues. So I'm glad to be here.
Good. Tech and society. I mean, the issues are so much bigger than what this is doing to teen mental health. I mean, the tech is changing all of us, our democracy, the way we think. Yeah, so tech and society, those are the big words for the next 10, 20, 50 years. Okay, Sean, good to see you again.
Hey, John, good to see you again as well. Hi, Zach. So I am here. I founded the Reconnect movement. I am primarily representing us. We host phone-free social events on university campuses every other week for students to experience, an uninterrupted social environment that they would rarely experience otherwise. And so I'm also representing Design It For Us. I'm with my fellow organizing facilitators here. So yeah, good to see everybody.
Okay, great. Leah, and then Kendall.
Hi, my name is Leah. I'm the assistant director for the film Our Subscription to Addiction. Yoel will speak in a couple minutes so she can fill you in on more details, but it's basically a documentary outlining her story and experience with social media and our entire generation and giving them a practical toolkit to succeed. I'm really excited to be here, and I'll pass it to the next person.
Oh, yeah, wonderful. When is this going to come out? When will the documentary come out?
We're not sure an exact date yet.
Okay.
I don't know if you all can describe more
Okay.
detail, but
Okay,
hopefully
we'll
in the
get to
next
her.
year or so.
Great. We'll get to her in just in a moment then. Okay, Kendall.
Hi, I'm Kendall. I recently graduated from Santa Clara University. I also am with Design It for Us. Uh, we actually have our organizing facilitator meeting right after this. So, uh, yeah, I also have been doing work with Steve recently and Nicole, which has been awesome. And funny enough, I heard about you a long time ago through Kim Lear at Inlay Insights. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her. That's when I started doing research on social media's relationship with youth and authenticity, stuff like that. But yeah, excited to be here.
Okay, great. UL.
Hi, it's great to see you again. I think I met you at the activation, the milk carton moment in New
Oh
York City.
yeah. Oh, that's right. We talked a lot
So
there. That's right. I thought you looked familiar. Very good.
it's great to see you again, Zach. It's great to meet you. Yeah, as Leah mentioned, I'm the director of the documentary Our Subscription to Addiction. So it tells my personal experience with social media addiction, and really tells my story of how I hit rock bottom down the YouTube rabbit hole and my discovery of a youth-led digital well-being movement. So in the past 3 years, it actually started by being mentored by the Social Dilemma, but in the past 3 years, it's really been a discovery of all these incredible young people that are creating these solutions. So we've interviewed Design It For Us, Young People's Alliance, Log Off, all the amazing, wonderful people that are part of this movement, and gotten to feature and champion their stories. And really our mission is to screen the film in 10,000 schools all across the US, beginning in New York City. And yeah, it's been a fun time.
Okay. Yeah, no, that will be amazing when it comes out. We'll, certainly keep us posted. We'll do what we can to, to help publicize it.
Thank you.
Okay, and Nicole?
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Nicole Gill. I co-founded an organization called Accountable Tech. We lead advocacy movements looking to hold tech accountable. And I also helped found Design It For Us. And so I feel a little bit like a proud, I'm going to go with like grandmother given this crowd. Here, just seeing all of you pop up, it's very wonderful for me. I also have two young girls who, and by young, I mean, one is 18 months. And they already are grabbing those phones. So it starts very, very young.
Okay. All right. Well, it's great to have this. This is a really nice sized group. And so let me just tell you, I'll say a bit and then we'll talk. So the book, some of you read it, some of you have seen other things that we've said. The book is really organized around the two parts of a story. The story is about what changed during early puberty between 2010 and 2015. And in 2010, if you were born in 1995, around when Zach was, you turned 15 in 2010, and that means that you went through early puberty with a flip phone, which you used to call and text other people that you know, not strangers. And you got together with those people and you laughed and talked and flirted and did all sorts of things. Whereas if you're born in 2000, you hit the age of 15 in 2015, which means you were the very first people who went through puberty on a smartphone with social media and a front-facing camera. And as many of you know, the finding from multiple sources is that American teens, half of them say that they're online almost constantly. The phone's always in the hand. They're never fully present in life because there's so much going on the phone that even if they're looking at a person, they're not fully present. And I was really moved by the Shelley Turkle story, and we all love Shelley Turkle, but she has this famous phrase that because of our phones, we are forever elsewhere, and the loss of the ability to be present with other people, the loss of the ability to be present with a book. What I'm coming to see I teach courses at NYU. What I'm coming to see from my undergrads is that the mental health crisis, which is what Zach and I focused on, that's where the data is best. But I actually don't think that's the biggest damage. I actually don't think that's the biggest thing happening. I actually think it's the destruction of attention. Brain rot was the word of the year in one of the dictionaries last year. But as one of my students put it, I read a sentence, I get bored, I take out TikTok. Like, how are you going to do anything in life if you can't read a book? And actually, let me just ask, do any of you, I hope not you, but well, do you hear about young people saying they can't watch a movie, that they can't pay attention to a movie, like a 90-minute, 100-minute movie? So this is, again, really frightening. This is the loss of the human ability to pay attention. This is actually even worse than an anxiety crisis. I can't compare. This is also huge. So Zach and I are on a mission. We feel like nothing else matters. I mean, obviously global warming matters, all sorts of things matter, but this is like here now. Okay, global warming is here now too, but like, you know what I'm saying? And the other thing is global warming, like, okay, there's no way we solve that until we get the price of non-carbon based things down so low. I mean, I hope we can do that in 10, 20 years, but we can solve this year. Like we can solve it in the sense of changing society, changing what's happening for Gen Alpha. We can solve that in a year for about $0. It doesn't cost anything to fix this problem. So we're very excited that it's happening. We are, as Steve said, I was going to just, write the book and move on to the next one. But things are happening all over the world so fast because first, every parent has seen the problem. And so whether they're on the left or the right, this is one of the only bipartisan issues in the United States. Governors, red state, blue state, especially those with kids, they're really active. They all want to stop this, change this. So it's happening around the world. And so what we're doing is we're running a 3-year movement. I know this sounds crazy, but our goal is to roll back the phone-based childhood by the end of 2027. We think we can do that because most people seem to want to. The adults, but the really inspiring thing is that it's not like the adults are making the kids do something they don't want to do. What I've seen over and over again is that Gen Z is not in denial. There's almost nobody in Gen Z saying, "Oh no, the phones are great for us. We love the phones." There's a wonderful Gen Z poet, Corey Jane. One of the lines is, "I know it's poison, but I drink anyway." So we found that wherever we go, when we do surveys, Zach and I did a survey with the Harris poll, 50% of Gen Z, nationally representative sample, 50% said they wish TikTok had never been invented. The world would be a better place. So it's not as though your generation is so attached to this. It's that many of you, as you understand, you're trapped. You have to be on because everyone else is on. And that's what we want to do. We want to break the trap. And while we've started by trying to get adults to change policies and to stop giving kids smartphones when they're 9, now the phase of the movement we're in really calls for you guys, for us to support you, for you to be front and center. Nothing would be more powerful, to my mind, nothing would be more powerful as a form of activism than all over the country, high school seniors go back to their own middle schools and testify. And they say, kids, here's what's ahead of you. Don't do this. Don't do this. That would be so much more powerful than me or their parents or their teachers showing them videos or telling them not to do this. So let's see. I guess I'll more or less stop there. Okay, Zach, say a few words about what we're doing, some of the things we're doing after Babel, and then we'll throw it open, especially first for criticism and alternate views, and then for whatever you want to talk about.
Great. Yeah, no, that was great. And I think I'll just add in 3 things. So the first is so we have a Substack called After Babel where we present a lot of different writers, Gen Zers, researchers, and what John was starting with is like the book is kind of a story that happened in 2 acts, which is the loss of what we call the play-based childhood, which began back in the 70s and 80s. And then on the Substack, we go back even further to the 1960s around the loss of community and in-person social interaction and the loss of trust among adults, really tying into what Nick was talking about, the tech and society. It's the way that these two things are merged together. And so one thing I wanted to add, and I think that Sean was probably going to bring this up anyways, which is it's even if most Gen Zers don't love the phones, it's often the only place where things are happening. What else do we have to do? And so part of what I'm hoping we can talk about as well is how do we create a better real world experience for young people today so that there's more to do than just being online. So that was the second thing. And then the third is that, so we're also, if you haven't seen it, I'll just put it here. Here's the link to our website where we have all the information about both the 3-year campaign and movement that we're running and also the lab that I'm directing, where we're doing research. Right now, it's a lot of research on trying to understand and clarify the causal link between social media use and adolescent mental health. And then we're also doing a lot more right now looking at the effects of ed tech. What is it like to have one-to-one computers on your desk all the time? And that's something I'd also be really interested to hear from all of you. If you were in high school and middle school, you had a laptop on your desk, what's your take on it? And then we're also starting to move into a little bit about what's going on with boys, because boys really moved their social lives onto video games. And now we have a lot of stuff on digital gambling, pornography. So there's a whole world that we only touched on in the book. And so much more to talk about.
Right, thanks, Zach. So let's start with criticisms. What have we missed? What have we misunderstood? What do you think we need to know?
I think this isn't necessarily a criticism because Zach did touch on this point, but something I would just delve a bit deeper into. Like you said, there are all of these movements. Reconnect sounds like a great one. I've been going to something called the Offline Club. That's not in the US right now, but it's in other countries. But I do think like the discontent that comes from phones, I don't know if that's caused by them or a symptom of just this, like the way that societies are coded. Right now, I'm abroad in Oxford, and the life that I live here, it's like my step count doubles, my screen time halves, and I just can't do that at home because at home, I'm a product of the suburban sprawl. I could never walk to school. I always had to bus because of a combination of like gerrymandering, and being shipped out to like magnet schools. I never had friends that I could meet in my neighborhood. Even now, when I go home to visit, there's nowhere to be. There are no third spaces. There's Starbucks, there's Dunkin's, and even in cities, it feels like the emphasis on free public third spaces that kids can afford are dwindling. If you live in New York City, you might know about the Elizabeth Street Garden, which I think is an incredible place to develop community. Like the second you go there, the last thing you want to do is go on your phone. There are people doing Tai Chi, there are people reading poetry. Like I've talked to I've made friends with people from older generations, talk about intergenerational. I've had meet cutes, I've talked to strangers. And that garden is being torn down by the city right now to build housing.
No. Oh my God. I'm going to look it up
I
right now.
know.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah, and
I mean,
it's such a great environment to create that sort of community. And it just feels like our policy doesn't incentivize that. Like right now, in the next 10 years, we're going to have to build our way out of a housing crisis. And I wonder if we're going to think about how we facilitate real life connection that is accessible for young people that might not have driver's licenses, that don't have a lot of disposable income when we do that. Because right now, it feels like the life that I have when I'm abroad, it feels so surreal to me because I can walk in the morning to get my coffee. And I think for a lot of Americans, that's not a reality. And that's why the phones are sort of a sedative for that process. And the same way, like with schools, I know a lot of people are trying to get rid of phones in schools, which I completely understand, but I don't think it's a vacuum issue because I think you can get rid of the phones, but you don't get rid of the reality that a lot of public school, a lot of classes are overloaded. It is boring. It is bureaucratic. It is really monotonous and isn't tapping into their creativity in the best way. So I don't think you guys are doing this, but to treat it as like once the phones are gone, everything will come into play. I do think this is in tandem with a lot of the priorities our like American society in particular has taken in the past 30, 40 years.
That's beautifully put, Kanika. And so actually, Zach, why don't you post one link to our series on Gen Z voices, post another to the community, because I think that's of interest to a lot of the people here. Because what you say, there's that famous book Bowling Alone about the loss of community from Robert Putnam. And that was about what happened in the 70s and 80s when adults lost like associations and clubs and started just staying home watching TV and getting in their cars. So it is worse in America than it is in Europe, where they still walk a lot more. But you put your finger on the really hard part. So Zach and I feel like getting the phones out, boy, that's happening. We're going to succeed. Getting more free play, that's going to be a lot harder, but we think we can do it to some extent. But we can't really do it to the full extent until kids have places to go that are safe and interesting. And that's the really hard one, because now this costs a lot of money unless you find business opportunities like you're in the UK. Is there a thing called the Den? Have you heard of this?
I haven't heard of it, but
Okay,
initiate me.
see if you can look up the Den. I was because I think it's for profit, but it's a network of places that teens can go, and there's things to do, and there's an adult around, but they're not supervising you closely. So anyway, but thank you for that. Those are beautiful points, and yeah, if you want to write something, I think it would be very interesting to consider that for After Babel. That is right at the heart of the problem.
One thing I just wanted to add, because this is really interesting. It's something that I'm thinking about a lot. Is I was just talking with some play researchers in Canada, and what they were talking about is that they, over the last 15 years, have developed a ton of infrastructure for kids. They have the space, and yet the kids are not coming. So they're like graded really highly on that. But then when it comes to activity levels, they're like a D. Like they have some report card. And what I think is so interesting, and part of what John says a lot is like, you need to get the phones out in order for other things to even be possible to emerge. It seems like might be part of it. Like, if we just gave, for example, kids more recess at school, would they just be on the phones if you don't take the phones out? So maybe I guess my point being is I think we kind of see phones as the first step in order to open up the opportunities to do so many other things. But it can't be, but I agree with you, it can't be in isolation that if you just do the phones, the world, we're living in a utopia. Yeah.
Okay. Other criticisms or things we've missed?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the third spaces thing that has been said so far. But I think the place that I would gently push back is I don't think it's a binary, like either all phones should be completely out of schools, or they should be, or there's like third spaces that we can go to get off our phones. Like I think we're kind of avoiding the actual problem, which is like why our phones are so addictive in the first place. And I think kind of getting at the root of the problem, which is the business model and how it's designed to be addictive because they're making money off of our attention. Like, I'm a big believer in holding big tech accountable and creating, I think Design for Us is a great example of that. I've learned so much from them and working with them, and just saying, we need to get at the root of the problem, which is the design. I think it's really easy to say, yeah, I wish I told my younger self to get off my phone, but it's like, it's just so simple to be like, get off your phone. Like, I can say that to an adult. I can say that to my dad. Like, it doesn't mean that it'll work. And I think putting the blame also on teens, or just saying like, oh, those poor teens, and like kind of victimizing which I'm not saying you're doing any of this. I'm just saying this is like a common issue that I find in working with folks who don't see the bigger issue as not necessarily kids just kind of falling prey to these issues. It's more like, well, why? Because it's designed to be that way, because that's how the business model works. And we're blaming kids, whereas these tech companies are getting away with it and making money off of it. So I think that's my biggest pushback, and I'm more of a believer in let's figure out how we can use social media and be actively using social media, and understand how social media can be used for good, and how social media can be designed to be a safer place, and not a place that we feel that we have to lose all of our time, and it's a binary of either I'm on or off.
Okay, very well put. And I will agree with you that it's not a binary for those over 16. So social media is going to be part of your lives as adults. It does a lot of useful things. We use it to get the word out. So if we're talking about over 16s, then I'm with you in not being binary about this. But below 16, I'm totally binary. That is, we just have to make it so that it's not happening. And we have to do that by law, I believe. And until we can get it by law, we have to do it by custom. And so let me check with you. Because my sense is that a lot of your organizations, and especially Design It For Us, you're all about let's make these things safer. And my view is a touchscreen is so much more addictive than television. And you can't blame Apple for this. Television was entertaining. It didn't give you a stimulus response reinforcement loop. Whereas a touchscreen, I mean, everybody's seen this. A kid, like you expose them to a smartphone, and that's the most they want that so desperately, because you touch, something happens, you get a reward, you touch again, and within a few hours, your brain has changed, you're hooked, you're trained. So my view is that touch screens and people under 16 should have very limited, no 16-year-old should own a touch screen device. Now, of course, you're going to use them sometimes, and computers are a different story, laptops are a different story. Okay, so that's my extreme position. So what I want to ask you and the rest of you is, what do you think? Would you guys support a ban on, let's just start with social media, a ban on social media for under 16? Because I'm not hearing clear signs from Gen Z groups that they would support that. What do you think?
I think some of the things I was going to mention relate to the question you just asked, but I guess my concern with a ban on social media or just a ban on phones for kids under the age of 16, or just like banning them in schools, is that it creates this kind of like untouchable, almost more addictive relationship with the technology, where when you take it away, the kids are like, they still, it's not like phones are going to disappear from the world, like their parents are still going to be using them. There are going to be people out in public who are using them, and it's still going to be this shiny kind of special thing to them. So even if you take them away from kids, I honestly, in some cases, I think it could almost make the desire to be on the platforms almost worse. And then, okay, they turn 16 and they get a phone and they dive headfirst into like everything that the internet offers. At least for me, I remember when I was younger, my parents, they didn't let me have anything. I was one of the last people out of all of my friends who were allowed to have a phone, allowed to have social media. And I would literally like sneak my DS up into my room at night, go under the covers, go on my DS. If my parents opened the door, I'd be, pretend I was asleep. And then like in high school, when I finally had my phone, I would have to leave it downstairs. But once my parents were asleep, I would go downstairs, take my phone. Like they would have no idea. And I wanted it so much more because at least from my perspective, because I didn't have it. So I guess that's kind of my concern with just like banning them instead of maybe trying to give young people the tools to thrive on these social media platforms.
Okay, so this is
Could
right.
I
So this
take
is the.
this one?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I just have a couple questions for you, Kendall. So it's really interesting to hear your point of view, and I'm just curious, like if you could go back in time and imagine a world where none of your friends were using these. Like, was the pressure, was the desire, like the compulsion to want to be there because everybody else, most of your friends were on there?
I don't know if I could give you a clear answer on that. I honestly am not sure. But I assume it probably did play a part. And I understand what you guys are getting at with, if you take them away from everyone, then no kid's going to be feeling left out. Like that desire is going to go away. But I don't know if that really fully takes away that kind of feeling left out sense, because the rest of society is still going to be existing on these platforms. And then just my other thing, I studied philosophy in college, and I did a lot of like work in the ethics of tech and stuff, and understanding, like what moral agency means for children. And I think one thing that came up a lot in the work I was doing was like how you choose an age to ban things from. Like I guess I would be curious to understand from your perspective, like why 16 and why it's such like a hard stop there. Because in my mind, there's 8-year-olds who might be more emotionally stable and mature than 16-year-olds and may not be as easily affected. If that,
Yeah.
if
Okay.
that makes
Yeah, I'll
sense.
just give a brief answer, and then we'll bring in Nick and Evan. I came at this as a social psychologist, and everybody else was saying, well, it depends on the age of the child, and some kids are at this age and some are at that age. And people didn't see that, Nick, no, you have to have a clear line, because if some kids are on, then everyone has to be on. And that's why it keeps going down and down and down. And now in 5th grade, it's very common to get your own phone. So I thought, 18, that really social media is just wildly inappropriate for minors. It should be 18. But my goal was not to say what's the idea. My goal was to say what's a norm that we could actually get at a widespread level. And I think 16 is it. And 16 is very important because early puberty is when the most damage is done. Middle school, we've got to protect middle school. And then there's some research showing that for boys, because boys mature a little later, it really goes up all the way to 15, even 16 is the period of maximum vulnerability. So if you can send me at NYU, if you can send me kids who got to age 16 without this stuff and then dove into it, I will take them any day over kids who've been on since they were 10 and went through puberty on this stuff, because those kids will have a lot more trouble focusing and paying attention. So that's why I hear what you're saying about how everyone's different, but as with the drinking age or the driving age, like we don't say, well, some kids are ready to drive at 9, some aren't even ready to drive at 20. We say like, no, 16 is the driving age, and that's it. So I think it's a social coordination issue. But let's bring in Nick, and then Evan, and then Kanika.
Hey, sorry, I had my hand up earlier, but Steve.
Oh, okay.
Down. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, please go ahead, Sean.
Yeah. So I wanted to speak on the thoughts on a bans in general, because I think that the focus for a ban is why are we focusing on a ban? Is it agency? Is it I would say it's environment. And I would say that, the reason it wouldn't work for, you to say, hey, get off your phone, is because if you are off your phone, like people have been mentioning, what are you going to turn to instead? There's no third spaces. Everybody else is on their phone. So the way that I got involved in this was I got a flip phone because I didn't like being on my phone. My phone was, I was addicted to it. I was experiencing tons of anxiety when I would use Snapchat and Instagram and, wasting all my time. So I got a flip phone, and I thought it was going to solve my problems. But I went to school fully no phone, nothing. And I was, if you, take the personal use, I was at like 100%. I was the best habits you could possibly have, which was 0. And I still went into school and saw everyone around me on their phone at a pretty much constant level throughout the day. So starting a conversation with someone was like almost an impossibility. I was going.
Right. That's our point. That's why you have to have phone-free schools.
Precisely. And phone-free schools, I absolutely agree with you. Phone-free schools is the way to go. Full ban in schools, elementary, middle, and high school. Totally agree with that. But then when it comes to colleges, so now our generation has agency. And I think this is a really interesting finding that we found with the Reconnect movement is we offer a phone-free space where the ticket to enter is your phone. So participants that come to our events turn their phone in upon entering, and everyone agrees this. We've had groups of over 50 students join together, put up their phones in what we call our phone valet, and they join the event, and they're totally okay with that. And so I think that, and like you said, it gets into being a very expensive issue once you're creating, sustainable solutions as a third space. But actually, all we do is have a blanket and a little filer, and we file the phones, and everybody just agrees to put them away because the perspective has shifted. We're no longer focusing on spend less time on your phone. It's focused on let's create an environment, a space where we can all be apart from it together. And having the focus be on the space, and the space is what's calling people to put their phones away, not someone else or yourself. It's the space that is calling for phones to not be present. Now that is a cheap and sustainable solution to go forward in many other places in society, not just colleges. But I do believe that, like you've found so much evidence for in your book, we don't actually want to be on our phones. We're trapped. So this has been a solution that I found that has really activated young people and given them the opportunity to actually put their phone down in an environment that is conducive for that. So My goal is to spread Reconnect to as many colleges as possible, honestly, because I think all students deserve the opportunity to socialize phone free. I mean, there's not enough phone free high schools, middle schools, or elementary schools, but there's zero opportunity for phone free in the actual society or on college campuses. So any way that we can help and partner to get Reconnect onto more colleges and get more agency for the students who aren't in a position where they can just have all the phones taken away, I'd be happy to make happen.
Great. Yeah, we can definitely help with that. And you put it very powerfully and beautifully. When the conversation is about banning, and I wish I had not used the word ban because you don't need the word ban. When it becomes about banning, it suddenly becomes very negative. But when you offer a positive vision, that's when you really get people interested. And so what I should have said is we want a minimum age for opening accounts on social media companies, which are addictive and exploitative. And we think you should be 16 before you open an account. And so it's a minimum age. It's not a ban. There should be a minimum age, as there is for almost everything dangerous in the real world. And phone-free schools is not a phone ban. It's a distraction-free school. We think everyone deserves to be able to go to school and not have to be on their phone all the time. And then what's the other one? Oh, and then having a smartphone. I would never consider a law that says that parents can't give their 10-year-old a smartphone. This, I think, would just be a norm. But thank you. Focusing on the positive vision is really powerful for all of us, I think, in terms of motivating. That's great. Okay, Nick and then Evan.
Yeah, I mean, through the psychology lens, it's all about default states and habits, right? And as much as I like the sound of digital literacy interventions and building a more active culture on social media use, that positive alternative isn't realized yet. And in the meantime, we need to, do something more drastic to maybe allow ourselves the space to reconfigure a bit and understand how to reapproach these platforms and these devices and how we interact with each other through them. But we can't expect
what's more radical? What do you mean by that? Do something more radical?
Like banning phones. So I'm coming as somebody who went to a phone-free school until technically through high school, but junior year of my high school experience, they introduced iPads and they pushed them very heavily on us, right? They were like, no more notebooks, basically, no more this, no more that. You're going to take your notes on Notability. You're going to take your test on ExamSoft. You're going to watch videos I assign on Canvas for homework, right? And they didn't know what they were doing at the time. But I really do want to go back and testify to your point and say, hey, this is what happened to me those last 2 years of high school. I felt my brain change, and it wasn't just puberty. It was something worse, right? And I might have mentioned this to Zach in an email. I'm not even sure, but I was, writing a bit about this the past couple of weeks, and I went back into my emails from junior year. I had a girlfriend who went to our sister school who had a similar policy, and they also got iPads the same time as we did. And it was like 2016, 2017. We would talk about, we would email all day long, more than we even would have texted if we had phones out, right? Totally distracted, totally like living vicarious lives through each other in different school buildings. And I would complain, I would say things like, hey, I kind of hate technology. I wish that they let me use my notebook. And, it turned me into who I am now, which is someone who walks around with marble notebooks and a flip phone like Sean, right? But at the end of the day, it wasn't that salient until I got to college, right? Because when you're in high school, there's still enough guardrails in place. There's still accountability to your family, to your teachers, to yourself, where you can maybe understand something's going on, but it isn't until you're free to make your own schedule, free to prioritize what you want, that you realize you're kind of unable to do that simple thing. You're unable to say, hey, I really want to finish this book this week. I really want to go to this place and just give it my sustained attention, right? Because now, you've sort of developed these default states that are just not conducive to that. So I think because of the kind of insidious nature, the kind of, hidden way that this operates when you're in school, it's especially important to to get at the problem sooner than later in your life. And that's why I agree with, gating it at 16. That's why, I understand the approach you're taking. I do think that it'll be on us as young people to socialize that second half of the story better, to say like, hey, it's not done when you finish school, right? You need to kind of have this toolkit with you for the rest of your life, or as long as things, continue to operate this way in society.
Yeah. Wow, that's also very powerful. Nick, if you would talk or write about your thoughts about ed tech, that is very powerful. And right now, a lot of parents are freaking out about their kids being given iPads when they're 8, 9, 10 years old in school. And to hear exactly your age, people who've gone through it and are now, you're young adults, you can really speak and write well. To have you testifying, writing about that would be incredibly powerful. I don't know if any of the Gen Z organizations want to take on ed tech, but that I think is the next frontier. Thank you. Okay, Evan and then Kanika.
When it comes to having these conversations, I am not alone in the sense that I feel like an eyewitness as I'm a junior in high school. And I think that 16 years is a good year for that. And I agree with everything that's been talked about policy and environment. But my question to you is, how is this something that, how do you, from a policy perspective, how do you enforce that? Or to paraphrase, when it comes to social change, how do you push this social change when it comes to policy? Like how can the government enforce that a parent won't give their child their phone? As well as another thing, do you have any plans when it comes to education? Because it also seems like, yes, this is particularly bad for Gen Z because they're in a critical state, but this is also the same case for parents. They're addicted too. And, BIPOC communities are correlated with higher levels of screen time. And so how is this something that we can educate to parents? And it just seems, I feel like, and this is more anecdotal, I'm not sure, I would like to get your input on this. It feels like the difficulty comes in when we have these incremental breakthrough steps, like a phone policy. There's like a boatload of inconveniences, of course. But how do we kind and maybe this isn't the way to approach it, but how do we kind of push this social change all in the same time or all at once? Because it feels like if we don't do that, and again, please feel free to correct me on this, it feels like if we don't do that, the large corporations are going to win over the individual change. And yes, I believe that was it.
Okay. So there's a lot in that. So I'll start with the big picture: is how do you do social change? And Steve and I are products of the 20th century. There was a lot of social change in the 20th century, and it followed a predictable model, which is you have to have someone leading a movement, and then you have state chapters, and you have people write op-eds, and it takes a long time. And how do you reach people? And and social change takes 10, 20, 30 years. That's what it used to be. These new technologies allow things to move at the speed of light laterally across young people, across the world, across language barriers even. And so what we've discovered is that this movement is not like any 20th century movement. We don't have to have a lot of people trying to persuade anyone. We don't need to persuade anyone. That's the fun thing. At least all the adults see it, and most of the older Gen Z see it as well. So it's really more like we're just dropping sparks, and then it's amazing what people are doing in their local communities. Okay, that's sort of the big picture. Related to that is a lot of people, their first thought is about law and government and banning. There's a problem, we need government to ban something. And when I was over in the UK for the book, I talked with the government, Rishi Sunak, the prime minister, has his policy team. I talked with them, and they wanted to talk about how do we ban under 16s from having a phone. I'm like, are you crazy? Well, you're going to tell parents that they can't even hand their kid a phone in the house? Like, what do you mean? Because in America, that makes no sense. And so keep your eye on norms and culture. If law gets too far ahead of culture and norms, then people are not going to follow the law. And that's what we do with a lot of laws. That's what we did with laws about marijuana and other things, and homosexuality and all sorts of things that were like illegal. So what we're doing is in part a social change movement. And that's why when you start hearing, okay, and now let's get back to the virality. When you start hearing suddenly, wait, you mean that this Republican governor is for it and this Democratic governor and the teachers and the principals and the psychologists and the kids and everyone's for this? So what we're trying to engineer here is the most massive case of the end of the emperor's new clothes that has ever happened on planet Earth. Because everyone could see, wait, something's wrong here. My kid used to be so bubbly and happy and fun, and then she got her phone, and now she's 12, and suddenly she's all moody and anxious, and I never see her. Everybody could see something was wrong. But the companies had us convinced, like, oh no, there's no evidence of harm, and oh, they're the greatest tools for connection, and they're used for mental health. And so, people everyone didn't know that everyone was thinking the same thing as they were. And that's what I think is happening now, is a massive case of the end of the emperor's new clothes. Everyone can see this is terrible for young people. Young people should be out having fun with each other. They shouldn't be, as Nick said, if you're in school, you shouldn't have all your consciousness on people in other schools. You should be in school. So,
John,
yes, go ahead,
and I
Zach.
have a question for you. So your case for phones that you just made about how crazy it would be, a law getting behind social norms. Can you make the case for why it's not the same for social media? Like what makes that so different? I feel like would be
because if parents, the idea that parents would not be allowed to do something in private is just so instantly, intuitively un-American, and like you'd have to, that'd be really hard to persuade people to do. Whereas the idea that little kids shouldn't be on social media is already obviously true. The rules already say that. Nobody is like really in favor of it, of 12, 10-year-olds being on social media. So it's a weird thing where the actual behavior is actually discrepant from what we want it to be. And so that's why it's not hard to do this. I did think about first calling for them, doing it in 2 stages. I thought about, well, maybe stage 1, we get them to enforce 13. Just like, make them enforce, because they don't enforce it at all. And then we could raise it to 16. But I realized, like, no, we have to just do this, quickly in one shot. We don't have 3 or 4 years to gradually roll this out. Steve?
So I have a question about your work, and then I think a question that some of the young people can answer. So when the book originally came out, you did this very interesting thing, which you put up this Google Doc of the research, and you open source the research and got some pushback from academics who criticized this or that, or they didn't like the way you correlated this or that.
Yeah.
So when I talk both to young people and to parents about the now couple hundred parents who've come out quite publicly, particularly about social media and suicide.
Yeah.
The pushback that I get, well, is that's an anomaly. So I'm curious to the young people that are here, Jonathan, in terms of your research, and then in terms of young people, your experiences in your communities, are there real harms that you're aware of, either personally or in your network, that social media is responsible for? Are people hurting themselves?
Or is it just something you read about in the news, online?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say I think that's like definitely a real thing. Like I feel like in my life, like some of my friends who've had the most intense mental health problems, like a lot of their ability to overcome that is just when they were like, I need to get off my phone, like I need screen time, like especially I think as a girl, like having friends with eating disorders, I think a lot of that is just like you need to get off your phone. And I think that's like, I mean, again, nothing is so simple as that. I'm not trying to like um diminish anything, but I think that that's not just an anomaly. The the caveat with that is I'd say that like I've talked to other people and I don't think that that's like commonly accepted. Like like I was, talking to some of my friends about the anxious generation. I've read it, they haven't. And they were like, I don't know. I don't really think it was phones that made people depressed. Like it seems like it was other things. And even like at my school, the faculty were all required to read the anxious generation, but phones are not banned. And so I think it's just like there's I don't think people have quite like like all out accepted that. But I think it is most definitely true. Like, and at least I see it, but.
Thank you, Samara. I might be overstating because it seems to be everyone sees it, but I think you're right that it's not everybody who sees it, but it will be within a year or two.
My case is very much more indirect. In my community in South Providence, I don't hear too much about suicide. I think there's a lot that technology is causing, such as overstimulation, lack of focus, anxiety, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. However, I have a friend who's in Michigan, who's white, and we talk, and her testimony was a lot different. She's told me before that with her and her friend groups, they've said before how they're incredibly grateful that they didn't go forward with taking their lives. And that broke my heart. And it was something that surprised me because that's not, something I hear about in my community. But there are instances with that 100%.
Few years ago.
Okay, so let's. Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead. Will.
A few years ago, and when I was in high school, one of my friends did actually commit suicide because do you guys know like the anonymous Snapchat thing where you can like send messages? So that was a lot of people sent him a lot of hateful stuff, and he just got tired of it and decided to kill himself. So I think yes, social media does impact mental health and lead to suicide. There is a definite split in anonymity between like a person in person and talking on social media, on the phone. Even this is face to face. If this were an email, there'd be a separation. And I think a lot of people who are our generation and younger don't necessarily recognize the responsibility that having that separation can lead to. It can lead to a lot more cyberbullying, a lot more just negative comments, thinking that it doesn't actually matter. It's not actually real when it actually does affect people.
Right. It becomes very real very quick sometimes. Okay,
yes.
Thank you for that, William. So I noticed that we're just about out of time. I hope that we can just, if Kanika and Nathan, they've been waiting a while, if you guys could just say your points relatively briefly, and then I think Steve, tell us what to do to close up.
I wanted to say, like, back on the earlier points Yoel and Kendall were making about bans. This is a note less on the need of a ban, but the efficacy of a ban, which I think is the real problem. I think there's just something about the language of a ban, which I've seen a lot in schools that are like moving forward in this or interested in it, is that it just feels so punitive and puritanical, and it just turns it into like an us versus them, like the administration versus the students thing. And I think even if 14, 15, 16 is too young to be on phones, it's not young enough to like feel like you're not being infantilized. I think kids are really sharp and I think they're really precocious. And I do think there is something a little bit infantilizing in the way that the panic is being spoken about. And I think there is a very real way to harness the sentiments that they already have. Like Yoel says, like, I think big tech is a huge part of this. And I think if the us versus them wasn't us versus the parents that want to take this away, but us versus the corporations that are taking advantage of our lives, and turning our lives into capital, into collateral for their own profit motives, I think that's really compelling because our generation already has a lot of choice feelings about corporates around where like hypercapitalism has taken us, I think. I don't know anyone who finds Mark Zuckerberg compelling or his stupid idea to like have AI companions and viral like simulations of virality.
Insane.
Like, I think every time I talk about that with my friends or anyone, they're like, that's a crazy idea. And I think, like you said, there's nobody who doesn't feel this malaise. Like, everyone I know has some sort of antagonism towards their device. Everyone I know has been deleting Instagram off their phone periodically since 15, 16. So I think if there's a way to harness that in tandem with like, okay, if you're going to introduce a no phone policy, you're also going to have, like Sean said, events during lunch. You're going to like take a social studies class and turn it into a dialogue for the day where people can talk like this about how these things make them feel and empower them and make them feel like they're making the right choice for their life and not just we're taking your phone away. And then one quick note, I did want to say, shadowing Nick, I love keeping a notebook. It's kind of blurred out, but it is such an extension of myself, and it's so sad to me that handwriting is going away. And I feel like when I have my notebook, I can go anywhere in the world alone, and I can't say the same for my phone. And I think the return to analog is something that's also really interesting, and a lot of people have the appetite for, and again, is another thing that should be harnessed.
Beautifully put. Thank you, Kanika. Okay, William, brief comment, and then Steve.
Catherine gets the last word.
Okay, then Catherine. Okay.
I also just wanted to talk about just going back to phones in schools and the ban is that it also is just like a tool for it, the phone is simultaneously one of the most uniting and divisive things socially because you can reach out to anyone anywhere, but that really detracts from reaching out to the people like who are close to you in your community. So especially when I was in high school, I'm now in college and college is more diverse in general, but when I was in high school especially, it felt like the culture of like it was harder to for people to open up around each other socially and really build those relationships as easily as it was growing up, especially because it's so much easier to just detract and go into the phone and go find elsewhere instead of trying to foster and build social relationships around us. And that's one of the reasons why I think banning phones in schools would be a good thing because it would help build that skill for the younger generation.
Thank you, Lloyd. Okay,
Catherine, go ahead.
Okay, so what I also notice is that kids, they can't let go. It's really hard, especially if they're already really dependent on their devices. So for my school, in middle school, their phones are not allowed, but in high school, phones are allowed. You're allowed to have it on your desks, which I think is pretty crazy because the temptation is right there. And when I talk to my friends or just students, they're like, "Oh yeah, I would rather." They would say stuff like, "I would rather kill myself than, put be able not be able to have my phone around me during school." And I just think that's terrible. But at the same time, there are people that do want to break this habit, and really shift and really prioritize their mental well-being. I have a friend, she has like, I think it's an app or something like that, where every time she opens a social media app, this app would interject and make her do mindfulness breathing exercises for like 30 seconds or something to kind of clear her head, and then she'll be able to use the social media app. And she said it brings her mindfulness, which I think just the being aware is, yeah, important.
Yeah. Okay, thank you,
We are
Catherine.
out of time.
Yes, I actually have to run in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thanks to everyone. Zach and I took a lot of notes and we listened carefully. We hear, I think we hear you.
This
You've
was
been very
really
helpful in
amazing.
refining.
Yeah.
Both Jonathan and Zach, hugely appreciate your time. What a wonderful conversation and group of people. To the Gen Z folks that are on this call, you will all get an email sharing with you what the Sustainable Media Center Gen Z Board of Advisors looks like. What an extraordinary group of people. We'd love to have you join us and be part of future conversations. See you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.